just before I hand over and you can get into the interesting stuff that you're all here for, if you've got any questions, please pop those in the chat and there'll be some time to get through those at the end as well. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Emma and Oona to talk about production now. Enjoy.
Amazing. Hello, I'm here with Emma Grazette, who is a producer, and we're just going to start off by asking you, how would you describe yourself professionally as a producer? You're also on mute before you start speaking. Just look.
Professionally as a producer, or
Yeah.
how would I describe the role?
No, yourself professionally, yeah, as a producer, and like how you see producing.
So I see producing as the part that brings all the other moving parts together and spins all the plates and keeps them all up in the air all at once. As a producer myself, I'm a creative producer, so I'm interested in conceiving of projects, adapting projects, finding writers to work on, collaborate in development, as well as overseeing the whole of the production and post all the way to delivery.
And what's the difference between being a creative producer and being a different kind of producer?
Well, if you were a line producer, you'd be brought on once a film had been completely scripted and developed and was in prep. So you'd come on to prep the film and to work across the shoot. You'd be on set, you'd be budgeting, you'd be firefighting on set, but you wouldn't work on the film creatively before or after the actual shoot section. So though I have done that and probably will do that again, my interest is more in the kind of broader strokes of producing, as opposed to just the producing on set.
Yeah. And how did your career begin? Whether it was started with producing or anything before that?
Well, I had a whole different career first as a food writer and a chef, and because I was specialising in world foods and spices, and had quite a interesting take on them, I suppose. I paired up with this chef and we made this unscripted series for Channel 4, and it was while we were making that I got really interested in storytelling in a different way, because actually when I was writing about foods, I was talking about the provenance of the food and what it meant to the people. So I was storytelling already, but I got really interested in working in the film and TV industry. After I did that, I spent some years trying to figure out what to do in that industry, because I really I'd never worked in it. I didn't really have much of a clue beyond, there's a director and there's a bunch of people on set that do different things. So I worked as a runner, and then I worked as a locations runner and on locations teams. And that taught me that I did not want to be someone that only came onto a film to work on the crew, that I was actually interested in how the project came to be and how we would develop it and where it would sit in the market and things like that. So I knew that just being on crew wasn't for me. So then I also worked for Encounters Film Festival 1 year to see if perhaps I would want to work at that end in curation and exhibition, which I loved. I loved the experience, great team, but also wanted to work creatively on the projects as well. And so then I worked at a small indie studio in Bath for 3 years, where I freelanced as a production manager and then went on to be part of their in-house staff as a producer. I also tried my hand at directing, which was also very much not for me.
Why not?
And I think,
what was it about that?
Being on set's really not one of my favourite parts of producing, and obviously as director, that's like a very big part of it. I like the support that you can give as a producer to the creatives. I prefer to kind of nurture the creatives and help guide them and try and get the best from them, and it's that role that I really enjoy, as opposed to the leading on the vision. Though I do collaborate with directors, and my ideas often become part of the film, I'm not leading on that, and so I prefer that role.
And then after that, so after you tried your hand directing, and then producing. No, I
didn't like directing. No, that's fine. So I worked as a producer there for about 3 years, and I got into a bit of development as well on series stuff, and did a few things independently. And then we went into lockdown and I was furloughed. And at that point, I thought I'd quite like to go back to my initial love, because I used to study literature and drama, and I actually was thinking, if I want to produce, I want to produce fiction, and I want it to be like film and high-end TV, and the stories to be wonderful and fantastical and transport you. So I applied to several different mentoring schemes, which were great across lockdown. With the Independent Film Trust, they were fantastic. I had a mentor from them for 6 months, which was specific to women and diverse women in film. So if you are either of those things, I would definitely look into the schemes they run. I also did BFI Producers Lab, and I did a short course at the London Film Academy to prepare for my MA in creative producing at the National Film and Television School, which is where I am now. And that's really intensive and really relentless and all the information you need. And I love it. And then I'm developing my slate outside of school with various different writers and directors for when I finish.
And how do you balance that with being back kind of at school and then also kind of trying to develop your slate too? Because that's quite full-time, like you've mentioned before. Well,
because I guess when you're developing things, you're not working on anything really consistently as a producer, because you might be at very early development where you found a book that you think would be great to adapt, and you maybe got in touch with the agent and you've negotiated an option agreement, which they will do with people who are very early on in their career, as long as the book's not in high demand. And then at that point, you're like reaching out to writers whose work you like, talking about the project and seeing who might be interested. So you might be really early like that. You might be researching something. You might be a bit further on and you've got a writer attached. And as a producer, you are looking at script drafts and giving feedback, or maybe you're even before that and you're doing broader beat sheets and mood boards to kind of see where the story's going to go. So because quite often you don't get paid for development, definitely at the start of your career anyway, you will later on, but it's not something you can do full time anyway. You kind of fit it in around everything, and it's like having a row of ducks and you're trying to push all the ducks forward, but they're not all going forward at the same speed or all at once. So you kind of have to just do what you can when you can, and when you find someone and they've got a bit of time they can work on it, then you work on it with them there. And so it's like a movable feast all the time.
So it's kind of a lot of juggling and then also developing relationships. It just seems a lot of like doing a lot of different things at once. And you mentioned
I just love that about producing. I think if you're the sort of person who gets easily bored and you, I don't know, wouldn't want to think all day, every day about how to frame a shot or light something, for example, then producing's great because you get to do a little bit of everything.
I feel like that's why you're drawn to it, because you're doing different things all the time.
It's one of the reasons. No, I'm drawn to it because that plays to my strengths.
Okay.
I like everything. I can never decide on one thing. I like being involved with all of it. I like having the oversight. That's one of the reasons I like it.
And I just want to go back to, because you mentioned you studied drama and English. So when you left school, did you have any idea what you were going to do? And like, how did you choose to study that at university?
I actually chose to study social anthropology and went to university and found it way too sciencey and just defaulted to the thing that I knew the best. So I studied English and Caribbean literature, which was quite interesting for me because I'm really interested in Black heritage. My dad's from the Caribbean. And I don't really think I had a particular idea of what I wanted to do afterwards. Had I have known that the film industry was actually a great next step for someone who'd studied literature, and had I have kind of felt that that was something available to me, I probably would have gone there straight away. But
why do you think it? Oh, sorry, carry on.
No.
I was going to say, why did you think it? What changed and what made you see it as accessible? Because you're saying you didn't see it as that at first. and it was inaccessible to you, or you didn't even think it was a possibility type thing?
Yeah, I just think because very little was being made in which I saw myself. And you would think of like a producer or a director or the people that made films, and it felt very far away from Somerset, where I grew up. No, I didn't live in Hollywood. That felt like something that happened in Hollywood to people who weren't me. So I just didn't even consider it. And I don't think it was until the industry started evolving and changing, which is actually, I think, quite recent, that you start to see role models that you can aspire to, like Ava DuVernay, who is a woman of color in the industry, and she can do it. And then you hear her talk about her career, and she would say, well, I didn't feel like I was being offered a seat at the table, so I just went and built my own table. And when you see people doing it like that and being successful, it inspires you to go ahead and like do the thing that you want to do. And I always loved film, so why not?
Yeah, it is representation. So if you see someone in a position and you think, oh, I can do that, if they look like me, I can do that. But if you don't have that, then you're not going to think about it like that. And you mentioned growing up in Somerset. Did you get work in the Southwest, or did you have to move to start your career in the film industry?
Well, I worked at an indie in Bath for 2.5, 3 years. His Encounters Film Festival, which is brilliant. The unscripted scene in Bristol is booming. I think it's the best place in the UK to live if you want to work in docs and unscripted TV. I mean, the industry in Cardiff is growing massively too. I think it's quite a different scenario now than it was 10 years ago when I decided I wanted to get into it.
What was it like then?
I just think the industry wasn't as big in the West Country as it is now, and there wasn't so much outreach to kind of pull people in and show them like the paths that are available to them and opportunities that are available to them.
And if your work influenced by where you grew up and the stories that you're drawn to?
Well, I mean, the work I work on, I'm not sure I could say that the films are my stories, because I'm not directing or leading on that. But I am definitely drawn to Black history stories and stories about identity and stories that come from women. But I think that's more of I want to see representation in the industry. I want to see the playing field leveled a bit, and less about me, more just about, I want younger people to see all cultures reflected on screen, which I didn't have. So I kind of, as a producer, I can champion people who want to do that, or champion people from those places just to do whatever work it is they want to do. It's not necessarily like, oh, I want to only do like a biopic about Black history, but it does interest me, especially when people do it differently, when they approach history with like a more contemporary and irreverent lens, like Harlots, the series, or The Great, or what else, the Watchmen series. They were all dealing with like different aspects of history that we haven't seen from those perspectives yet, and I quite like that. But generally speaking, I'm much more sort of interested in working with someone whose like sensibility I like, and whose ideas I can get behind, and just to help push women and people of colour up, and like help them to forge a way. That's another reason I really like producing, because I feel like you're able to do that.
It's a lot of support, and I love that. I love that you want to focus on those stories because you didn't have that, which I think is just really important to have. That really excites me, that's kind of the future. So, I love it. What I was also going to say, before I keep going on a tangent about that, is that once you realized you wanted to get into producing, what were the first steps that you remember taking, or that when did it click, and when were you like, I want to be a producer now, I need to start doing this? Were you sure about what you were doing? Was it concrete?
Yeah, so I guess because I was working at this indie and I was producing, I started, and because I was super interested in working on more and more ambitious things, I realized I need to learn more and more, otherwise I'm not going to get there. And the more I learnt about producing, the more I just felt like that's the role for me. That's like an overall leader. You can essentially decide what you work on, what you champion, who you champion. You can guide it through, you can argue for it. You're just kind of like the like bolster behind the work or the creatives. So yeah, I was absolutely sure that's the role for me, 100%. And I love the role of producer, and it's probably the one I knew least about.
So what did you do first if you didn't know a huge amount about it?
Well, you just look up everything you can find online, I guess.
Yeah.
Take all the mentoring programs you can, ask everybody who's in the industry as many questions as you can. Read books, although books you don't get the soft information, but still helpful. Go to film festivals, talk to people, ask what they do, ask how, like, what does their day look like, and then just doing it as much as possible. So I mean, like, if you don't really know what you want to do, be a runner and work on big stuff and just talk to everybody, and you'll soon get a sense of what different departments are about. And then if you think you want to do that thing, get on a short film, do that thing a few times, see if you like it. I would.
And do you remember the first project you produced and what lessons you learned from it?
I don't remember exactly the first project I produced because I was working in-house. The projects weren't coming from me. It was like commercial stuff and short docs coming from clients and charities and things like that. I don't remember specifically the first, but I do remember just being floored by the phenomenal amount of work that has to happen. Because I think when you think about working in film, you kind of feel that the shooting of the film is the bulk, and it's just a tiny part of it. Just like a minuscule part of it, really, but it's the bit that everybody thinks about. So I think I was just like, oh wow, there's so much that goes in. You know, you can work with the editor and the production designer and the composer before you even have a script, and bring them in to help mold what it is you're making. And there's so much work. But I mean, if you were working on a feature, you could be working on it for 4 years until it's finished. Just so much work that you don't know happens, and it's a lot of actually, though there's loads of exciting things and creative collaboration and variety, and you get to meet all sorts of really interesting people, there's just so much graft as well. Phoning up agents, like going through show reels of cast, auditioning people, sending emails, calling meetings, checking risk assessments. There's so much graft that you kind of don't think about, and I think that probably struck me as surprising.
And when you did projects by yourself, what mistakes did you make or lessons did you kind of learn from doing that when it was more you on your own, if that makes sense?
I mean, I haven't really done a great deal on my own. You don't really do anything on your own, like in film. I think what you're aiming for is something that's always bigger than some of its parts. And part of what I love about making film is the fact that it is always a collaborative affair. I mean, I've learnt tons, I've got loads of things wrong and learnt loads, but not from like doing things on my own, for sure.
From working in a team.
I think you just can, if you're really open to the fact that everyone has something to contribute, you can learn from everyone around you. And
do you have a favourite project that you've done? Or one that really sticks out?
It's still in development.
Okay, so you can't say.
No, but it's a Jamaican history.
Okay, we'll keep it vague.
Project.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm excited when that comes out. From your past, from the ones that, are there any that you can mention that have been made that were really, or like you just really remember vividly and had a really good time doing?
Well, as I said, when I was working as a producer before the NFTS, the projects I was doing were commercial and were like short docs type stuff. I prefer doing fiction, which is what I'm doing now. So the projects I've done in the last year are my favorite because they're fiction.
Yeah. So yeah, we can't speak about that basically. Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
I mean, my last film we shot on 16mm, which was a challenge, especially when you've got limited stock and limited time.
Yeah.
But really fun experience to have, especially in terms of being really frugal in the way that you tell a story.
Okay.
It was a great project. It was the biggest fiction film that I've worked on as a producer, that I've produced. So we had a crew of like, I don't know, maybe 18, and we had 4 casts and about 50 extras. So that was a pretty fun experience. That's gonna be released this year and probably be submitted to festivals this year.
Okay. And what I was going to ask is kind of speaking about the projects you're doing and kind of now going more into fiction, do you think that with the stuff you watch that also influence you, like you mentioned like films and things that you watch, you think that influences now how you approach these fiction projects?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think everyone's influenced by the films they watch. I mean, if you were to like watch a Tarantino film, they have these videos on YouTube where people have broken them down scene by scene and shown you the films that have directly influenced that exact scene. And there are like hundreds in any given film. I think everybody, and it's more of a homage and a paying tribute to your favorite bits. It's not a stealing of something. But yeah, massively influenced by films, especially from my childhood and teenage years, the ones that used to rewatch. So now I used to really love Labyrinth and Never Ending Story and really fantastical stuff that doesn't seem to be around that much lately. And I'm really keen to bring some of that back and see some more of those really far out films.
And when you watch films now, do you see them with more of a producing side to it? Like when you're watching a film with all the stuff you've learned?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I watch them and I'm like, wow, how did they do that? And oh, that's a great shot. And like, wow, that must have cost a fortune. And yeah, but it makes them richer to me. It just doesn't ruin it at all. I just can really appreciate the craft that everyone's put into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the being able to unpack how they've actually done it or guess how they've actually done it is really fun. I find that really enjoyable.
And earlier you were talking about like mentoring. And how did you find out about that, and how useful has that been with you and your career?
It's been probably the most useful thing of all. I would recommend everyone gets mentors throughout their life, because there's always more to learn. And I think having a mentor, it can be quite reassuring because you can ask all the questions that you don't otherwise know who to ask. And also you start to form this kind of community of filmmakers. And you realize, oh, when you're making this thing and you don't know how to do that specific thing or approach this, you're not actually on your own. You can go to these people and you can just say, I don't know how to do this. How would you do it? And so you can learn from their experience and benefit from their experience without necessarily having to like stumble at all the same hurdles they did. And they give you all this brilliant soft knowledge, which is, you won't get it from books. It's from their experience, and it's the in-between stuff that's super, super helpful. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And it's also a great way to really get to know people in the industry, to be mentored by them. And it's always helpful, like as a producer, to be expanding your network all the time.
And have you done mentoring yourself? Have you started that or no?
I haven't yet, but I think that I might be mentoring a cohort or someone from a cohort on a program called the Momentum Mentoring Program, which is in association with Channel 4. So I was in the first round of their mentees, and they've expanded, and they're, I think, taking 40 or 60 people across the UK this time. So hopefully I'll be involved with that.
Amazing. I just noticed that we've got a question from someone, which I'm going to quickly ask you. which part of the process do you find more satisfying? The beginning and planning how to produce a project, or seeing the final project once it's been through every department?
Oh, it's definitely the process. So even before you get to planning how you're going to shoot it, it's that sitting down with people that you have a shared sensibility with and talking about where your interests overlap and what you're looking to make in a film, and then finding a story within that, and that kind of connection and that spark, and then getting something on paper and reworking it and reworking it again and taking it to people and getting their feedback, and then as the project goes on and more people get involved and they're bringing their creative skills and their input, and suddenly you're starting to prep for it to shoot a film, and 3-4 months ago, a short film anyway, you didn't even have an idea. And I just really love that you can start with nothing and then end with something. And it's the process for sure that is the important part. I mean, obviously we all want to make good films and do good work, but you spend so much longer, so long making them, that if you don't have a good time with the process, then what's the point?
That's so true. You're actually so passionate about a project because you do work on it for so long.
Yeah, and also, you know, we should enjoy the things we do. I think we bring our best selves to stuff when we're enjoying it for the most part.
And are you sorry, carry on.
No, I just was going to say, it's obviously really nice to see the final product, but it's also, it can be quite heart-wrenching, because I think quite often you don't end up with the thing you thought you would. Because you make the film in the script stage, and then you make the film again in production, and then you make it again in the edit. But I really like seeing the end product too, because there's always something to learn that you can then integrate and take on to the next thing. So for me, it's like a learning journey in an industry that I enjoy being in, with people who I enjoy collaborating with. And if it was just about the things we made at the end of the day, I'm not sure I would want to be in it just for that.
And do you ever find it difficult then seeing the end product compared to what you thought of at the start, like just the difference? Are there any products where you're like, that was so completely different to what I thought it would be, like at the start?
Yes and no, but because there's always learning to be had, and I think if you can figure out what you can learn from something, then everything's worth doing. Because then you like evolve with the new knowledge. Hopefully the thing that you're going to do next time will not make the same mistakes. So it's always a joy to have gotten to that point, regardless of the outcome, I think.
And do you feel like you've built up like a community within the film industry, people who you can speak to? Because you mentioned mentors, but any of your peers, people like that? Yeah,
very much so. But I've worked really hard to do that. I just watch as many shorts as I can at as many festivals as I can, and the ones I really love, I just reach out to the creatives on Instagram or whatever, meet them, have a cup of tea, chat to them about what they're into, and then you just sort of stay in touch with the people that, I guess, like vibe checking, stay in touch with the people who are on the same vibe as you, and you sort of continue to talk about what you're doing, what they're doing. And at some point, the hope is something will click, and there'll be a spark, and you'll be like, oh, okay, let's do this, let's develop that.
And do you ever go to any like networking events? Because what you're saying is networking, but in a really nice way of just connecting with people. Whereas I feel like the term networking is used.
I'm not sure that I tend to keep a really big network of people. I think I'm interested in people that I actually connect with. And meeting them and finding them and keeping up with them and building those relationships. It's not just a case of like a blanket networking necessarily. And also when with like funders and people who are higher up than you, exec producers, not everyone's going to be your cup of tea and vice versa. So there's no point in trying to keep up with everybody. I think it's more a case of trying to find those few people who get you and who you like and who you can really work with. I'm really all about like longer term collaboration where possible, because I think if you work with someone on something, you work well, you do a good job, you have a similar sensibility in terms of what you want to make. If you go and you make another film with them, then you'll already have like a shorthand in terms of communication. You'll have sussed how each other works somewhat. You can probably figure out how to get the best out of each other a bit more. And then on the next project, you can like level up and build on that.
Yeah.
So I think if you can find like your people and sort of work with them again and again, that feels like quite a beneficial thing to do.
And you're based in London right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like with stuff being online, you're able to connect with a lot of people, not just from London, but people all around? Like you mentioned, like going out for coffee, but if someone's kind of further away, is that how you'd connect them on Zoom or things like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think most people are pretty open to people reaching out and saying, I'd love to have a chat with you. But I just think that perhaps what I've learned is only do that for the people who you're genuinely really interested in. Don't just reach out to someone because they're a producer or a director, but like watch what they've done, see if you like it. If you like it, why do you like it? Then you can reach out to them and say, I really like this thing you did because of this and this, and I connected with it because of this. This is what I want to do. I'd love to talk to you more about your ideas. And then usually people are quite open to that. Like on Zoom, in person, whatever.
And you mentioned earlier about like executive producers. Would you be able to explain the difference between producers and executive producers?
Yeah, so I mean, since we're doing a BFI thing, if you were working with the BFI and they were funding your film, they would provide an executive producer.
Yeah.
And then you would also have your producer, director, writer. You probably at a later stage bring on a line producer, maybe a PM as well. But your exec producer would check in, well, they check in quite a lot through development to make sure that the project was viable, that you're not making a project that's going to be 300 million, because they're not going to give you that. So they would like check in and you know, help support. Really, an executive producer is like a supporter and a guide and an advisor, and then like make sure that the project's going in the right direction, that you're not stumbling. Like, is there something you need? Is there something the project needs? And I mean, they can be in different roles, but like as a funder, you definitely get an exec from whoever was funding you, and they'd weigh in on different parts of the script, and they'd weigh in on how the shoot was going, and then they'd weigh in on different cuts in post as well. And then you might also just have an exec producer that you bring on because they're really reputable, and your funders would trust them to oversee you to make sure that the project was made in a timely manner and the thing was made that you proposed and that they're paying for. And they might trust them because they've been doing it for 25 years, but they might not trust you guys because you haven't made anything yet. So sometimes it's good to find like a guide or a chaperone for your project. Sometimes that can be someone who's mentored you, for example, who can like broker the introductions and kind of, in a way, ensure the project gets made properly.
So would you say
No, I think it's really helpful as well for the producer on the project. It's really helpful to have an exec. Because you've got someone that you can go to when you're like concerned, you don't know what to do, you're not sure if you're doing it right, and they do, probably because they're more experienced.
That was going to be my question about your relationship with the executive producers. You've just answered that. And do you, because now you're kind of know more about the role of a producer, do you always feel comfortable asking questions, and how important is that as a producer?
I think anyone in film should always feel comfortable asking questions. And I think as producers, we should facilitate an environment that it feels safe, where anybody can ask anything at any time. There are no wrong questions, and nobody's ever made to feel bad for asking, because none of us knows it all. That's why we have a massive crew of specialists. You know, I might be trying to put together a film and a package, and I might be trying to budget for example, on the animation I'm working on at the moment, I need to budget for a stop motion set build. I've never done an animation before, so I have no idea what a stop motion set build costs. If I don't then go and ask an expert who does know. I'm just going to be like stood in the headlights guessing, which is no good for anyone. But if I don't mind going asking everyone, no, I don't know what this is, explain what this does, what do I need, what should I be doing, how much should this cost, how long will it take? That's actually your role as a producer, is to ask questions and to press on things by asking questions, going, are you sure, why are you doing it like that, does it need to be done like that, do you need that really expensive camera, like do you really need 100,000 people running over the hill for that battle, is there any other way you can do it?
And with the asking questions, I was thinking about, because you're at film school now, and what made you choose to go back, not to go back, to go to film school, and do you feel like that's answered a lot of your questions through doing that kind of, because it's a really intense course?
So we'll start with the first bit. I decided to go back to film school because I think I found it quite difficult to switch from what I was doing, which was commercial and doc style stuff, to bigger, more ambitious work, feature films and high-end TV. I didn't really know how to bridge that gap. In hindsight, I don't think you have to go to school to do that by any means at all. You can definitely just get in. You have to get in low down as a runner or an assistant. There's loads of schemes at the moment because the industry is just desperate for crew. They're training people up in all the departments. And if you start low and you work your way up, then I think you can learn a lot doing it that way. Again, I just don't think I was particularly aware of that. And also because I'm like older for a student as well, I don't want to start there and work my way up. I know that I want to produce, and I think producing is the one thing where you can't really figure out if you want to do that by doing all the other stuff necessarily. And also you can't work your way up to producing unless you're line producing, and then you would like do production coordination, and then you'd be a PM, and then you might step up to a line producer. But if you just want to produce, then you just produce. You just need to in hindsight, I mean, I think that I thought that there was this like mysterious curtain that had to be lifted, and all this stuff that I needed to really specifically know in order to do it. And there's loads I'm learning from school that's like super helpful. But it's nothing that you can't learn if you set your mind to it. I think the thing that school definitely gives is like a network into the industry, because a lot of people at the school are, well, everyone at the school is an industry professional as well as a tutor. So it's very industry facing. And then also it's the knowing what you don't know. So they know what we don't know, and they tell us what we need to learn. And if you're doing it on your own, you obviously have to figure it out. At some point you'd figure out, oh, I need to budget on Movie Magic and schedule on Movie Magic because that's the industry standard, but no one's going to tell you, so you have to like work it out. But you would, and the more you ask questions, the more you kind of get battered in the right direction. And you can just find a writer, find a director, put something together, start pulling all the different elements together, find them a location, help them develop the script, like think about how much things might cost, think about, oh, is there toilets there? How many people are we going to need to do this? What kind of roles will they need to take? Where are we going to get the kit from? Where are we going to store the kit? Who's going to act in it? And if you're starting to do all of that and pull the project together, then you are producing. And you don't need to go to school to do that. You just need to have like a will to do it, and probably a like of, you know, organizing, bringing people together.
I was going to say, are you talking about bringing people together, are you looking at like credits, looking at crew, looking at actors? Are you always looking for those people in the films you watch, or do you know what I mean? To like kind of build up your network.
What films I watch. I mean, I'm looking for people to work with who I feel are at a level that I could viably work with them.
Okay.
So I wouldn't watch like a studio film from Hollywood and be like, oh, I really like that actor, I'd really like him on my film, because it's probably not going to happen. But what I can do is watch films that are just a bit beyond me. So maybe like debuts for first directors who couldn't afford like really high level cast perhaps,
Yeah.
and look at the people that they're working with, because probably a lot of people that they're working with are at the right level for them, therefore they're probably at the right level for me, they're sort of within reach. So it's kind of pitching yourself and your projects viably as much as anything. Does
that make sense? It does.
Yeah.
And like almost looking like a step above where you, I think that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Or like a step above, or just reaching out to people that are still around the same level as you.
Yeah.
And then, you know, sometimes you can get lucky and you reach out to an agent and someone, they love your script and they're not busy, and you get someone great on your short film. But I mean, you don't need someone really famous to make a really good short film.
And so I just noticed we've got another question. Do you think people will ever run out of stories to tell on film?
No. In a word. Well, because I think that we've been telling stories forever. I think it was like the first way that people communicated their learning was by telling stories on the sides of caves. And there's something really primitive about learning from storytelling. I think we're really drawn to it. I think we're drawn to watch crazy, unimaginable scenarios playing out on film, so that we could like watch how would people deal with that and figure out like navigate the world, and without actually having to experience those things ourselves, we can be like, oh, this is how people would deal with that, and this happened, what they did. And I know that it's not all real, but I just think that there's something in us that's really drawn to that primitive storytelling and like garnering of information, that so that we can sort of jump ahead and not have to experience things ourselves in order to understand them. So I think that humans will never be bored of hearing or watching stories.
And would you ever think of writing your own story or creating your own project as like a writer or director, or no? Would you want to stick to being a producer right now?
I mean, at this point, I collaborate with both writers and directors. So when we're all working together to develop a script, there's my ideas, there's their ideas, there's perhaps other people's ideas. It's not really about, have I done it? Is it mine? It's more like, this is our collaborative team. What can we pour into this? And what's best for the story? And it doesn't matter whose it was or where it came from. We're just creating together. And I really like that. I'm not a writer, so I'm happy to work with writers, maybe co-write with them, but I couldn't do that on my own. I don't have those skills. And why not work with someone that does and is great at that? I'd rather do that than like try and be good at loads of different things. In terms of directing, I'm not really interested in that.
No, you mentioned that. That's fair. I feel like it's good to know what you're good at, and you don't have to do multiple things. You can kind of figure out, I'm good at this and I want to work with people who are just as good but in different fields.
Yeah, and I think it's really good to know your strengths and weaknesses so that you can augment those with people that have complementary strengths.
Yeah.
So that you can, across your team, actually, you've got everything covered, because not one person is going to be great at everything.
Did you ever find that hard with your strengths, like kind of figure out your weaknesses were and admitting that?
I think it's hard to figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are. I don't have a problem admitting them, because I think if you don't want to admit them, you can't work on them.
Yeah.
And it's all about learning and growth and the journey. So yeah, no, I'm not worried about admitting, in a team meeting, like, I'm not really that great at this. Someone explain this to me. Who's good at this thing? What's the best approach? There was going to be someone there who's got good knowledge. And if you can't do that within your team environment, then you've got like a mentor or an exec producer, or your peers who are also producing, and you can take the question to them and say, how would you approach this? Like, does anyone have any bright ideas? Has anyone done this before? Yeah, you definitely don't need, it's definitely not as lonely a role as I perhaps thought it was to begin with.
Oh, really? So you thought it was quite lonely at the start?
Well, I think I thought if you're leading something, that you really need to just know what you're doing with everything. And the truth is, there's so much to know. As soon as you start scratching the surface, you realize how much you don't know, and that you always will not know a lot of it, and you can only learn so much. And the only way to then bring something together confidently is to ask people who do know better than you do, or know different things than you do. It's very much a communicative and networking role. You really need that network of peers and mentors and people further on than you, because you can't possibly know it all. Every single film is different and will need different things.
And you said you're most interested in fiction films right now, but then you also mentioned that you're doing an animation, which I'm guessing is fiction too. So is there a specific genre that you're like really interested in, or is it just fiction and then the stories that you connect with?
Yeah, I think I'm less interested in something that's straight drama. I'm definitely not really interested in kind of kitchen sink drama. I do really like genre films. Less so horror, though there are a few good ones like Get Out, but I just think I don't want to recreate in a film the world as I experience it around me. It's film, we can make it whatever we want to, so why not make like the wildest, most imaginative place and version and story? I think that's, for me, that's more fun.
And what advice would you give your younger self, or someone in a position when they were younger and just starting out?
I just think I wish I had more confidence younger, more confidence to just sort of go out and get stuck in and try it and fail, because I think when you get stuff wrong and you fail, then you learn so much more than if you hang back and try and wait until you know how to do everything right.
Yeah. So always be willing to fail and like learn from that.
And just like go into it, have fun, don't be too worried about the outcome, just get involved and learn from it.
And then I'm going to check we don't have any more questions just from anyone else. But I feel like that segues into what you hope to do as a producer in the future, and what you want to do and like change within the film industry, or just change with your films.
I mean, I think it's probably more about I hope that I can contribute to a more diverse film industry in some way. It sounds like a really earnest aim, but I just really want the industry to be more equal and like more accepting and more welcoming to you know, neurodiversity, disability, people of colour, LGBTQ plus community, and still unbelievably still women. I just hopefully I can sort of fight for that stuff a bit. And in terms of the projects I want to make, I want to make the films that I want to see, and so I guess they're quite different to a lot of stuff I've seen before. So I've got a task figuring out how I'm going to convince anyone to give me the money to make those. But I want to work on some quite bonkers stuff.
And do you ever struggle with the funding and the financial side of producing as well, just in terms of getting the money to make the films you want and the stories that you're passionate about, or something you're more confident in?
Wait, sorry, you have to rewind. Wait, what is the question about? The
financial aspect, the funding of films and like that aspect as a producer.
I mean, once you get your head around like budgeting, that side of it's like pretty straightforward. It's easy to, well, not easy, but like it's quite, you can figure out how to come up with like a potential budget for something. But yeah, it's finding the right place for that to land. And then again, I think that comes down to communication and network, and so knowing the right people for the right projects. But then also I think it comes down to I mean, and this is just me theorizing because I haven't really done this a great deal yet, but it's sort of finding the right format or packaging so that feels like a film or a project that needs to happen now, that it feels right for now. So there's certain things that industry people just aren't interested in financing on the whole at certain times. And so if you're trying to get something through at a time when, I don't know, thrillers are all the rage, then you'll have a bit of a, that's not the project for now, save it for later, save it for another time. And perhaps think along the terms of like, it's also not necessarily about what they want now, but also kind of gauging the cultural zeitgeist and seeing what's the vibe in the world, what's the world interested in, what's capturing people.
And what would you say that is now, right now?
Well, I don't think I'm the right person to necessarily comment on that. Things that most of the stuff I want to make is probably not the stuff that they're looking for right now. But that's okay because I'm still studying for another year.
And we've got another question actually, which is, what do you think about the current monopolizing of industries, for example, Disney buying rights versus the rise of amateur producers due to technology being more accessible?
I think it's really tough when the big streamers and people like Disney want all the rights to something. They basically want to buy the product and then it's theirs.
Yeah.
But they pay crews so well that people want to work on their projects. So it's really tough, I think, for independent producers because all the crew are being paid brilliantly by Netflix and Amazon and things, and they're all super busy. And hard to crew up on something that's not going to pay them as well. And I think it's also really tough if your film does amazingly or your series does amazingly and you don't own it. That's got a sting. So I think I really look up to Michaela Cole, who did I May Destroy You, because she refused to sell her rights. She said, no, it's mine and I'm going to keep it. And she still, by hook or by crook, found a way to get it made and to get it made in the way that she wanted to on her terms. So it's definitely possible and you should fight for those things, I think. And I don't think all the rights and IP and should be going to these people. I think it's really tough on the creatives and I would rail against it.
So would you ever see yourself working for a big company like that, or would you, like, where do you see yourself going in the future in terms of producing?
I think it would be an interesting thing to work for a company like that for a few years.
Okay.
Because I think you can learn everywhere. Yeah. And they are so much a big part of the industry right now, and they've got so much money to pay to make brilliant stuff that obviously it would be a really interesting experience to work with them, see how they work on some of that stuff. I don't think you necessarily have to work against them to do good work, but on the issue of rights, I don't agree with them. But I mean, they're facilitating loads of brilliant work. So yeah, I'd like to have my own company one day and exec produce and bring projects through my company that I felt were really needed in the industry and perhaps the industry was lacking in. But that's probably a longer term plan. In the shorter term, I think I just need to produce a few things.
That's what I was going to ask. What is your 5-year or 10-year plan, and where do you see yourself?
Yeah, well, I would really like to have my own company. I'd like to do something like Ava DuVernay's The Rain Now, but in the UK. that really supports people of colour and women. And I would like to exec produce on that, and to have lots of people around me working in different areas, so that I didn't have to do the parts of running a company or production house that I'm not good at, that I have brought people on with the right skills to do that. And I'd like to create a really strong and like a pipeline for people, create young creatives in that could support them throughout their career, rather than just give them like a one-off opportunity.
Yeah.
And a place where they feel that they're represented, and with people around them working with them and mentoring them that they feel they can relate to. That would be the dream. But I think before that, I just need to produce for a while.
How long's a while for you?
I don't know. I really don't know. Depends whether any of my projects get commissioned, I suppose.
And because I think we spoke about you mentoring in the future, and do you think that is really important to you, to connect to people who are just starting out and who are kind of figuring out, starting out as producers? And I like that you want to maintain that relationship, that your goal will be to support them and continuously have that relationship with them, so it is not a one-off thing, because there's stuff that one-off things can be good, but I think it's nice to maintain that and always have that communication. So that's
yes, I guess it's about that how like establishing longer term relationships, like I spoke of earlier. I'm not saying that I would necessarily be the mentor or supporter.
Yeah.
I would like to establish a organization that could offer that support, or you know, pair with some of the brilliant people who are doing it already.
I'm just noticing that we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to ask one last question,
Okay.
which is, and I have got a couple more, but I'm going to ask one more question, which is just maybe either a lesson that you've learned that you want other producers to know, producers who are just starting out, or what you would just tell them right now, if you could just tell people who are just starting out.
Someone said this to me not that long ago, and it just struck me as the most obvious, most simple, but most effective piece of advice, was that you come across a lot of creative differences, and there can be like people rub up against each other. Someone thinks it should be done this way, someone else this way. Maybe there's like some ego involved. And actually, one of the best things that you can do as a producer is listen to them, and just stop and actually just engage with people, and listen to them, really hear what they're trying to say, listen to their ideas, maybe don't talk about your own as much. And you can learn from people like that. You can also, I think, really help people who are having a tricky time, which is something you have to deal with a lot as a producer. So yeah, that would be advice that I think is good.
No, I think it is so simple, but I think that is really good advice, and especially if that stuck with you from someone else telling you that I think that says a lot, and I think that that's an amazing place to leave this on. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Una.
No, thank you for taking the time to speak about your producing career, because I feel like I've learned so much, and I think I do have more questions, but I think I've just learned so much from just hearing. I think it's nice to hear people's individual stories, because then it feels like less of just a role and more of an individual, and you can just see how you can get there, which I think is really lovely. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Amazing. I head back to see Vash now.
Yeah, thank you so much to both Emma and Una for joining us tonight. I found it such an enjoyable conversation, such a useful conversation, both from like the very practical points, like how to find people you like to work with and how do you reach out to them, to the much bigger questions about what kind of stories do we want to tell, about who and to who. So just once again, thanks so much to both of you for joining us. I hope everyone watching enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. If you have been inspired and want to get started, we've got 2 commissions with Somerset Film, which for 2 short films for Somerset based filmmakers. So check those out. There's up to £1,000 of funding. So that's always the big thing. You can get funding, you can get started. And to make sure you don't miss any more of our opportunities, any more of our events, do check out our website where you can see what we've got going on now, and follow us on social media to stay in the loop going forwards. For this evening, though, all that's left to say is just another massive thank you to everyone who tuned in, and of course, a massive thank you to Emma and Oona for joining us. So yeah, have a good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.